My name is Imani Shaw. I'm not loud. I never have been. They said I was too quiet, but my exit was the loudest, reverberating into what at first glance looks like a revenge story. I listen more than I speak, observing and analyzing. In a world that rewards noise, I was the silence they didn't know how to handle. Especially in tech where confidence is often confused with how loud you can be, and leadership with swagger. They said I was too quiet, rather cold and distant. But what they really meant was too black, too female, and unwilling to play the game. I worked in a tech company that loved to call itself progressive with its glass walls, ping pong tables, and lip service to diversity. But behind the branding was a loud boys club that was very much male and white. Meetings happened without involving me. Ideas I pitched were ignored until they were repeated by someone louder, paler, and male. I was told I lacked executive presence. Translation: I didn't laugh at their jokes, didn't drink at their happy hours, nor perform the version of myself they wanted. They mistook my quiet for weakness and my silence for submission. They couldn't be more wrong. I neither screamed nor raged. I preferred my peace of mind. So I wrote a resignation letter. That's not just a goodbye, but a mirror I held up to their culture and letting them see it for what it was. I wrote about the exclusion and microaggressions, the privileged white male culture that thrived on silence, conformity, and punished difference. It was meant to be a private final act of dignity, but dignity doesn't always get the last word. A female white colleague, equally aggrieved, leaked it. She said she was amplifying my voice. The letter spread like wildfire, with the industry Slack channels lighting up. People whispered. Then they shouted as former employees came forward. Stories poured out. The company tried to deny it before panic set in as they lost credibility as talent began to leave. In droves, I watched from a distance, refusing to give interviews or statements. I also made no tweets. I was just silent. I found peace and satisfaction in my silence. And it was louder than anything they'd ever heard. They scrambled and issued statements. Then they hired consultants and rebranded. But the damage was done because the truth had a voice. Now, and it didn't need to shout. I didn't plan to become a speaker or a symbol. But when the invitations came, leadership conferences and panels, keynote addresses, I said yes, not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted change. My first talk was surreal with a room full of executives, listening to the woman they once would have ignored. I spoke about introversion, race, and gender, most importantly about silence as power. And they listened, really listened to an introvert saying it, as it is meant to be said. Now, I speak often, not because I'm loud, but because I'm heard. I teach leaders to listen to the quiet ones, to see beyond the noise, and to recognize brilliance in stillness. I remind them that some of the most powerful voices don't echo in boardrooms. They resonate in silence, in restraint, and in truth. They said I was too quiet, turns out. Silence can be seismic. After that first talk, the invitations started pouring in from universities, startups, even the same Fortune 500 companies that once ignored me. Everyone wanted to hear from the woman who wrote the letter. But I wasn't interested in being a symbol or in being anyone's redemption arc. I chose carefully. I spoke where change felt possible, not where they wanted a headline. I turned down panels that wanted me as a checkbox. I declined interviews that wanted drama instead of depth. I wasn't chasing applause. I was building something quieter and lasting. Months later, I got an email from the company I left. A new CEO with a new tone sent an invitation to consult. I paused, not because I was bitter, but because I was clear. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. So I agreed to meet, not in their office, rather, on my own terms. I walked in, not as an employee, not as a former colleague, but as a voice they could no longer ignore. I didn't perform. I didn't soften the truth. I laid out a blueprint for change, one that centered equity, not optics, one that prioritized listening over branding. Whether they followed it or not wasn't my concern. I had already moved forward. My story didn't end with a letter. It became a movement. People started sharing their own stories. Quiet disruptors found courage in my cadence. Companies began rethinking what leadership really looks like. I launched a platform, anonymous, safe, and powerful. A space for those who've been silenced, sidelined, or simply unseen, to speak, heal, and rise, and through it all, I stayed true to myself. I didn't need a spotlight, I built one for others. They said I was too quiet. Now, my silence echoes in boardrooms, classrooms, and hearts. I didn't just exit, I opened a door and left it wide open. It wasn't my intention to take revenge. But as it panned out, this story has all the look and feel of a revenge story. Or more appropriately, a justice well-served story.